All right. And we're live. Welcome, everybody. Merry Christmas, everybody. I am Dan. Right next to me is Tim subscribe to at Nerd Champs. And at the bottom of your screen, you have Jonathan joining us live, up late, way past his bedtime on a weeknight on a Thursday, joining Nerdside Champs for the first time. If any of you out there want to know who to blame or attack or find for me and Tim being on the YouTube with all of this talk and stuff, it's his fault right there. He's the one.
Yeah.
It's his channel, his constant quest to find more people to come on and review superhero movies. First, he got Tim. He asked Tim if he knew anybody. Tim said, hey, Dan could do it. And then we started doing other things and we decided to make our own channel. So it's all Jonathan's fault. Do you have anything to say for yourself?
I was your gateway drug. I'm happy to be you guys' gateway drug because it's a wild, wonderful world. And you know you guys love it.
Yeah. Send all of your hate mail for everything you hate about me and Tim. Just go to the comment section on the latest video of Comic Book Cinema, which is where you'll find Jonathan, and let him know, first you can argue with him about whatever he's just reviewed in his most recent video. And then after that, and say, and by the way, I blame you for Dan and Tim at Nerd Champs. But that's not what we're here to discuss today, folks. We're here to break down the first 2 episodes of Disney Star Wars' latest project on Disney Plus, Skeleton Crew. We had a 2-episode premiere. Episode 1, This Could Be a Real Adventure. And episode 2, Way Out Past the Barrier. Guess first, Jonathan, what was your overall takeaway on Skeleton Crew?
I really found myself, the first episode was a little slow. I thought the pacing was a little slow. They probably could have moved it on a little faster, but overall, this is not a bad show. And me saying that about a Disney project, and not only a Disney project, but a Disney Star Wars project is really shocking. And contrary to popular belief, I am not one of those people that decides in my brain that I'm going to hate something before I watch it. I'm always rooting for Marvel Disney and even Star Wars Disney. I mean, anything that comes out that's, mainstream and pop culture, I'm always rooting for it to succeed. And with this, it was a pleasant surprise. The whole premise, I guess you could say, would be the Goonies meeting the Star Wars universe. That's kind of, in a nutshell, what they were selling it to us as. Right. And with that, I think you're going to bring a lot of people in. And the show so far is not bad, as opposed to selling us a show by saying, this is the gayest Marvel project ever. This is definitely a better business strategy in my mind.
Yeah. Tim, what was your takeaway from the first 2 episodes?
My initial takeaway is very similar to Jonathan. First of all, when it comes to these series, I have to say that I'm cautiously optimistic. I do feel like Disney has gotten me on the first 2 episodes of something before, and then kind of pulled the rug out from under me. So yeah, I mean, that was Secret Invasion, right? That was Moon Knight. That was even Falcon Winter Soldier. I mean, they generally do have things kind of either front loaded or back loaded. And I'm kind of hoping that they can keep the consistent excitement through this show while at the same time giving me good content and not making me mad with all the canonicity and all the other stuff that they've done in other Star Wars stuff recently. So so far, so good, but I'm fully expecting that at any point that could change. Okay. So, that's the pessimist in me, knowing what Disney has done recently, but so far so good. I enjoy it. I think, like Jonathan said, there were some Goonies in there. There was some Treasure Island in there. There was even elements of like The Village, The Giver, a lot of different things that you'll see elements for to kind of build to this one story, which was really good. And then they put it in the middle of the Star Wars universe, which I really enjoyed. So we were introduced to a planet that, correct me if I'm wrong, we had not heard before, at Atten. Dan, right. Had you ever heard of Atten before? I had never heard of it.
From this is it's new.
Yeah. From what I understand, it's new, and from what I understand, it's something that is not known to anybody. It was, kind of like a reclusive planet. They didn't want anybody to know about them, and it's because they've got these credits that their currency is worth way more than everybody else's currency, and so that's why they don't want anyone to know about it. They're considered like a hidden treasure planet. So it's a really good storyline for a space pirate story, which is what this actually is. So yeah.
And that's kind of the big mystery of the show.
Yeah.
And I'm all for it. I mean, that's the MacGuffin, if you will.
Yeah.
I'm very intrigued.
I love a good mystery. I'll break down some of my initial thoughts, and then we'll get to the comments. We have a few in the holster. So I'm going to try this. We haven't done this live, but hey, it worked.
There it is. Yeah.
This was pitched to us as Space Goonies. And I'm a little older than you guys, and it definitely nailed the Space Goonie vibes. And I hope this show keeps the initial quality. And if it does, I hope it finds an audience, because I texted Tim today. This didn't just remind me of the Goonies. I don't know if you guys even know this movie.
Explorers. Yep. Mm-hmm.
The Explorers. These were kids that built a spaceship in their backyard. It's from 85, I think, or 86.
Do you remember the old Space Camp movie, Dan? Do you remember that one? Space Camp. It's essentially the same as Space Camp too, So
I got ET vibes.
ET.
This, and on top of that, even like
Stand by Me.
Movie that's not set by Stand by Me.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm saying when I say I hope this finds its audience is this show was made for kids, but I told Tim today it's made for Gen X kids.
Mm-hmm.
And not in the sense that it's made for Gen Xers like me that are 45 years old now. It's made for a Gen X kid. Like, these kids in this show have definitely had the Star Wars equivalent of hose water.
Mm-hmm.
These are latchkey kids that their parents don't know what they're doing when they get home from school. They play outside. They ride bikes. They have fake lightsaber fights. They drink Star Wars hose water, whatever that is. These are not modern kids. They're not sitting around playing video games.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you get this 80s, Gen X kid vibe, and I'm loving it. And I hope today's kids can relate to these kids, because that would say something good about the generations. I would think. So let's see what we got in the comments. We got Barry Allen and Slow. Lots of fun. I loved all the Easter eggs they left for Star Wars fans.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know
if you've been here the last couple weeks, folks, you'll know what Easter eggs he's talking about. So,
You've done a deep dive, Jonathan, trying to prove that Disney did not, in fact, kill Star Wars, because George tried very hard to kill Star Wars before Disney ever bought it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And we've been reviewing a lot of the bad. We just reviewed the holiday special. And the Elephant Family, when the kids are watching that performance on the holo table.
Yeah.
That is straight from
that is an act from the holiday special. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that's a fun week and a nod. And I hear your comments, Dan, about George Lucas trying to kill the Star Wars universe before Disney.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Here's the difference, I would say. Yeah. George Lucas I would say that he definitely had the purest of intentions. He was always trying to improve his work, even though a lot of the improvements that he made, people hate now. And a lot of people wish that they could get the original versions of that original trilogy back on 4K or on the most up-to-date, definition. But at least he had good intentions. And I'm sure, deep in their heart, Disney has good intentions too, but they are being led. The Star Wars universe right now is being led by someone who, it baffles me that she's still in that role.
Yeah.
Kathleen Kennedy has given us flop after failure.
Gonna die. She's gonna die in that seat, man. She's gonna be like Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
But here's the thing:
she's gonna die in that seat.
Who does she have dirt on that she's able to stay in that position like that? She should have been fired years ago.
Well, it's clearly not. It's clearly not Iger because he's come and gone since she's been there a couple times. I mean, so I don't know, man, but
it might be Iger
with Lucasfilm. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
She was not a Disney executive. She already worked at Lucasfilm.
Mhm.
So anybody that
Well, she was
had
an
dirt
executive
on,
producer on Raiders, right? I mean,
yeah,
she was
so
an
anybody that
so
she had dirt
yeah.
on would not work there anymore.
Yeah.
As far as her producing career, very impressive. And
Yeah.
maybe that's what she should have stuck to instead
Yeah.
of becoming a creative, because that
Yeah.
she is not. And she's not able to maintain these crucial relationships because you keep seeing these projects that start up and then they
Yeah.
just fall apart. And,
I'm
and
gonna
the
throw out-
actors and directors and writers come on board. And then, once again, they're there and then they're not there because creative differences.
I'm gonna throw out my latest theory, and then we'll hit the next comment. That in the Disney Star Wars universe, the quality of the project is inversely proportional by how closely tied to the mainline story and the mainline characters it is. So the farther away you get from it, the better it becomes, with the one exception being the Acolyte. And in that case,
I would say the reason the Acolyte is bad is because they did try to reach back and pull other characters. They did try to reach back and pull Plagueis. They did try to reach back and pull Yoda. They did try to reach back and pull Kaya Mundi. They did try to pull these other characters, and that's why that entire thing fell flat. They felt like this was the MCU and they had to tie it into everything.
You can't really blame that on the like those characters. Those characters didn't pop up to the very end of the show. The reason that show was bad is because it was awful writing, awful actors, just terrible all the way around. Not because of Yoda.
That shows you what the priorities of that staff were. That staff was only focused on trying to make this a Star Wars project by putting Star Wars characters in it. They didn't focus on any of the other stuff, and that was the problem. So anyway, that's a tangent. I'm sorry.
I think the exception to my rule might be if it's about Jedi. Jedi are like the Jedi Order is kind of a legacy character in itself.
Yeah.
And if it features the Jedi Order, they're going to mess that up too. But if they could stay away from all that, you get Rogue One, Andor, The Mandalorian. These are the things that are almost universally liked, but the sequel trilogy, Solo, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, people don't like this. They need to get away. Like in this, so far, they've stayed away from it, and it's very enjoyable. What's our next comment? He said, this show, it was a very similar tone to several 80s kid adventure films. Yeah, I just went through them, and it definitely is. It gives you that, it even, some of the 80s adventure films have a Charlie Brown tone, where the adults are there, but they're really not. Like when they were in school, the robot was teaching class, and I swear it felt like Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
The robot teacher yeah. I played it back to see if it was saying anything important. Did you guys notice Urkel the Space Pirate?
Urkel the Space Pirate. Yep. That was Jaleel White. And he had the Kano eye thing going on, you notice that? So he's like a cyborg, I guess, is what it looks like. So
yeah, that was pretty crazy, right? I don't think he's been in anything major in a while. I mean,
he did Dancing with the Stars like 2 years ago, something like that. But that was it. I mean, that's the only thing I could think of him being in.
It's not fair, but can you take him seriously? I struggle.
I thought he did a fine job. I mean, when he was not Urkel,
we don't know a lot about that character yet, so we'll have to see. Yeah, we'll have to see.
Who was Urkel's alter ego in Family Matters? What was his name again?
Stefan.
So when he was Stefan, he was a completely different person. So
he's a rangy actor. He can do a lot. So we'll see.
There we got. And then Jon Snow Knows Nothing thought it was much better than the recent Disney Plus shows, but it's early. Yeah. Now, we all reviewed The Acolyte on Bone Bridger's channel, and we didn't really decide we hated it to probably episode 4. Was it 4?
I think 3 was when they introduced the thread and the power of many and all that kind of stuff. So it was by about episode 3, I was just like, I'm about done. You know what I mean? But I also think that at the very beginning, we all kind of had questions because they killed Carrie Ann Moss in the first 5 minutes, and that's the only reason most of us were there. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
This wasn't like that, right? Jude Law did not die in the first 5 minutes. Okay,
No.
he was the top billing, and he did not die in the first 5 minutes. We got several integral scenes that included the obvious character that they're trying to pump up for merchandising, which is Neil. Okay, Neil is the character that they're trying to pump up, right? They're trying to sell the Funkos, they're trying to sell the stuffed animals at Galaxy's Edge. It's very clear that Neil is the character that they're trying to make the face of the Skeleton Crew, and I think
that's the elephant, right?
Yeah, that's and I think they nailed it with him. He was Chunk, right? I mean, let's just call it what it was.
Yeah,
he was Chunk in this group, and it fits really well with that personality, the character, everything. I loved it. So that worked out really well.
Yeah. So yeah, and again, so far, I was telling you, I'm hesitant. I feel bad to like things that Disney produces now, which I hate to say. In my room filled of IP that Disney now owns, and to say that I don't really root for them, but they've hurt me so bad.
I know. It's hard, man. It's hard.
You become bitter, you know. So
they haven't hurt me as bad as you guys. I'm certainly a lot more optimistic than most.
Yeah.
But they have hurt me a lot, especially with their Disney Plus projects. I'm not even talking about Star Wars right now at the moment. I'm just talking about Marvel. Mm-hmm. And with the Star Wars, if I was a diehard Star Wars fan, I would be furious with Disney. That's something that I have the luxury.
We are, Jonathan.
Yeah. I have the luxury of not being, I'm not by any means a hardcore Star Wars fan. So when they release a crappy show, like a really, really crappy show like The Acolyte or Boba Fett or what was the
Obi-Wan or
Ahsoka, yeah.
With the arms crossed.
It doesn't bother me. Like, okay, I tried the show out. I didn't like it, whatever. But I can totally understand why you guys would be not very happy right now.
Yeah. That's like the thing. It's like Disney is this like really fun guy to hang out with that beats his wife when he goes home. It's that kind of thing. You're like I'll go see Inside Out 2 and be like, that was really fun. But I know what Disney does to my pal Star Wars when he gets home.
That's right. That's exactly right. And it's so hard because you try to come in these things with a clean mind. And Dan and I had seen so many rumors about what was going to be coming that we had kind of already decided that we were going to hate Skeleton Crew. So we're like, how can we come in this thing with a clean mind? And we tried really hard. And then, we watched it and we were like, you know what, this actually wasn't that bad. So yeah. So anyway, do you want to try to run through these episodes real quick, Dan, so that we could kind of talk about what happened as it went?
Okay.
And, So, yeah.
So episode 1, we open with we're establishing the scene. This is all taking place in the New Republic timeline. So this is after Return of the Jedi. Mm-hmm. And on the edge of the galaxy, piracy is becoming rampant because the New Republic can't maintain order as a brand new government. And we get a full-on pirate raid of a New Republic freighter. And while we're here, I would say that action sequence, like the blaster fight on the freighter, the trying to get him to unlock the hull, that whole sequence was some of the best action I think we've seen in a Star Wars project in quite a while.
Yeah, since maybe one of the Mandalorian seasons, maybe, I would say.
I beg to differ, sir.
Yeah?
In The Acolyte?
Oh, stop it.
In The Acolyte. Stop it. Everything about that show was horrible, awful, except those action sequences were top notch.
I still think
they weren't Star Wars, if that makes sense. I think I understand what you're saying. A lot of like kung fu people might have liked some of the stuff. Okay. What I didn't like is there wasn't a lot of actual Star Wars action in The Acolyte. There was the lightsaber fights, which makes it a little bit more Star Wars than other projects. But
would you prefer the original Obi-Wan actor in the original fight with Darth Vader?
Yes. As
Um,
opposed to watching Smither
Come
Wren kill
on.
9 dudes in the dark behind some trees. Yes.
Come on.
Yeah, the big one that they kept pitching was in the dark behind trees. I saw almost nothing.
We keep going back to the Acolyte, man. John, how did you do this, man? We were
Yeah.
talking about the episode, and you're like, remember all
Anyway.
that stuff about the Acolyte? Let's
You
get
said
on
it
a
was the
tangent
best
about it.
action you've seen in a while. I beg to differ.
No,
I think the action in the Acolyte was way better than what we've
I
got
think-
so far.
I think the Acolyte looked cheap. I think the Acolyte wasn't very Star Wars-ian, if that's a term. And I think that this is much more in the vein of what they need to be doing if they want to get my attention.
And I'll agree with that. But speaking of
Yeah.
looking cheap, that Wolfman looked really cheap. Probably
But-
more cheap than the
but I
background
think-
of Agatha.
I think the pirates are meant to look cheap because they're meant to look kind of like Guardians bad guys. You know what I mean? They kind of want to be the big lumpy, almost fake and ridiculously hilarious kind of. That's kind of what I think they're going for.
Well, this
with them.
action
It's over the
sequence,
top.
It was high adventure. It was swashbuckling, which works for
Yeah.
Star Wars and works for pirates.
Yeah,
And the other thing is, we're talking about the head, the second in command of the pirates is a Wolfman.
Mhm.
Actually, that's one of the things George took out of
Yeah.
the original, 1977 Star Wars.
Probably a
for the
good
special
choice.
edition. He was in the cantina scene. He was removed and has never been added back. But one thing that I did like about this series is in many of the instances, especially in the creature effects, they have decided to do practical almost all the way. There is very little CG, maybe in some of the spaceships and stuff, but there's like no CG in the characters. There's like no, maybe the droid might be, some of the droids probably. Maybe metal can be very real when it's CG, so you don't know if it's practical but all of the creatures are practical. And I know sometimes the practical effects don't look 100% real, but the exertion that the CG looks 100% real is false as well. It's two different kinds of fake, and I like the practical versions. So
yeah. Before we hopped on, I was talking to Dan about the one thing I didn't like about this show so far, and it's the same complaint that I have with a lot of the Star Wars shows so far, and that's that the ship at the very beginning was really bad CGI. And the reason I didn't like it is because that's one of the things that George did that just reached out and grabbed me as a kid, is when he used the model ships on the backdrop and worked the camera in order to make it look like a real ship. That's something that I really think Disney needs to look into, because I'm with you, Dan. Practical effects so much better.
I think the best special effects period is the perfect marriage of practical and CGI. Like you guys said, too much CGI looks too computery and fake, but at the same time, sometimes you can go too far in the practical realm, like with Wolfman here, and get something that looks a little too puppety and too fake. But with all that being said, I mean, I do miss the puppet Jabba versus the completely CGI Jabba.
Yeah.
I think there's a Jabba that we could get somewhere in between that would be perfect. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think that the marriage of those two creates something that's a whole lot better and believable.
Yeah. Well, like something like Jurassic Park, where there's a lot less CGI than people think. CGI was very new, and people think the dinosaurs are 100% computer.
The lighting and the camera work is what made those work, man. The prosthetics, you can hardly tell when Steven Spielberg splices them in, and that's kind of what I want from my special effects. And I haven't been able to get it for a long time because they're so focused on CG. And so, anyway,
we open with the pirate battle. We've got Captain Silvo is the captain, and his crew is not super happy with him. You could tell because he's talking to the captain of the ship that they marauded, and he's telling them, "Oh, we're about to have a big payday, boys." Because in any pirate thing, the crew is always mad at the captain because the captain's trying to find a big score, and sometimes it goes a long time, and he thinks he's found the big score. Captain Silvo has a Cobra Commander mask with a pirate hat. It's basically Cobra Commander. You take away the blue helmet, you give him a metal pirate hat. That's Captain Silvo. it is not official. Like Jude Law is Jod Na Nawood. That's his name in the IMDb for his character that we see at the end of episode 2.
They clearly want us to think this is Jude Law, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's what they're
almost very clear that Captain Silvo is Jude Law. I think, So anyway,
well, didn't he reveal his face in the last episode?
But is that the same person? That's what we're asking.
It's not established that he's the same guy.
Yeah.
But it's like the mystery that's not a mystery. So we're gonna say that it is the same guy.
Yeah.
And so anyway, they make it to the hold of this freighter, and there's one measly credit in it. And the mutiny starts right there on the freighter. A battle breaks out. And we cut away from Captain Silvo, and this is where we find our team of space Goonies. Our main character is a boy named Wim, whose dad works a lot of hours. His dad is like, he sees him in the morning.
A single parent. He's a single parent and works a lot of hours, right?
Yeah. Yeah. In the morning before school, he's like, here's lunch money for the whole week, and you probably won't see me again. Bye.
Yeah.
He lays a bunch of stuff on the table. Wim meets up his friend Neil, which is our elephant friend, and they are definitely, they're the ones having pretend lightsaber duels. They're a little bit of an outcast. You can see the kids across the street are staring at them like they're weird because they're having their lightsaber duel, and which is kind of a hint that something's amiss on this planet, because in the original trilogy, Jedi are all kind of mysterious. People don't know if they're even real anymore. And by the time after Return of the Jedi, the only Jedi left is Luke Skywalker, and he's trying to rebuild the Order. So the fact that these kids are dreaming of being Jedi is kind of lets you know that like something's off,
And that was shortly before Luke threw the lightsaber over his back, right?
Yeah.
No, this was years before that, but this is. I mean, I think that's a good summation of it right there, Dan. You kind of get the feeling that something is off on this planet, because the fact that they're pretending to be Jedi, like you said, the rest of the Republic doesn't even, they think that Jedis are just legend. They're not a thing that anybody really remembers anymore, So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and the one thing is he leaves his house. We're in space suburbs. We have sidewalks. At first the houses look like regular houses, and then they pan out. You could see the architecture is different. It's space architecture, but you get our first space suburbs, which is cool because, this is a kid adventure, and this is the kind of adventure that have suburban kids. At school, they find out they're going to have their assessment test next week, which is another kind of dystopian kind of like, you're going to take a test that determines your whole future of what you're going to be,
It's the Giver. That's the Giver. That's what the Giver was, right? It's like, we're going to tell you what your life is going to be.
All the kids want to be some version of like an actuary or an accountant or an analyst. They all want to be the most boring things you could possibly imagine, because they ask them in class and they are so stoked to be these boring things.
And then Wim says, I would like to help somebody. You know what I mean? And they all look at him like, what? So,
I will point out, they're riding the bus. We did get to see an RX droid, and we get to see quite a few RX droids, Rex, for those you don't know, from Star Tours. It always just makes me happy to see an RX droid. It takes me back to when I was a kid.
How long has Star Tours been around? It's been around since the 80s, right? Or was it?
I think Star Tours opened in like 86 or 7.
Oh, wow.
Like
okay.
Maybe 88.
Yeah.
I mean, it was definitely
what is that, by the way?
Star Tours?
It's the first ride that was at Disney World.
At Disney World and Disney.
It was before Disney and Star Wars were even a thing together. This is back when it was MGM Studios. They had the ride at MGM Studios. And that's where it was the only connection that they had. They kind of had paired with Lucasfilm to do some stuff because Indiana Jones, they had the Indiana Jones show there, and they had the Star Tours. So yeah, I did notice that as well, Dan.
Yeah,
So,
it's like one of the first things is the Star Tours was one of the first things that Disney put in the parks that wasn't owned by Disney. They made a deal with George Lucas, and they put that Star Wars ride in. And I rode it when I was a kid and went to Disney World.
And the AT-AT, they had the AT-AT model, and I think it's still there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, yeah. So,
and you would basically the RX droid is the pilot, and you're on a commuter shuttle, basically, and it goes on a misadventure. Is the ride? It's a motion control ride with a screen and everything. It's been upgraded and improved, like I think 2 major times since then. But when you're at the park, the RX droid is in the front of the room, the ride.
The ride,
and it's live and it's made, and you see it there. So to see him in the show is a nice little Easter egg, and it's fun. So everybody wants to be something boring at school. Win wants to be something fun. Neil is buddies with Win, but he's more normal than everybody else. He actually wants.
He's very cautious. Yeah, he's very cautious and concerned about getting in trouble. And yeah. Neil is the guy that never takes any chances. So yeah.
Now on the school bus, which is called a tram or something, he does look out the window, and we meet our other 2 kids, which is Fern, which is like, I don't know, the main girl, I guess I would say, like the head of the 2 females, and her
she's
friend
Icebox. She's the Icebox. So, so yeah.
Yeah,
if you weren't born before early 90s, or maybe like, early 90s ish, you wouldn't understand that reference, but that's from The Little Giants.
Yeah, there you go.
And great film, by the way.
And so we get KB is her friend with cybernetic enhancements. She's got a visor like Geordi from Star Trek, and they're, I think, skipping school, and they're out riding on a speeder bike, racing through the streets, almost getting in wrecks and stuff. And they're trying to, their speeder bike, they blow a power coupling, I think it is, and she wants to have a race, so they need to get that repaired. And then the next day, Wim has studied real hard for his placement test. He's actually going to try to do well, but he oversleeps and misses the bus, and he's not going to make it to school. And he tries to cut through the woods like he saw the girls do. He falls in a ravine, finds a big metal door, at which point a droid finds him, takes him on to school, and he's in trouble, where he meets Fern, who is also apparently always in trouble. And she hears Win tell his dad, when his dad comes to yell at him and says, I got you a second chance to take the test, but you're going to get this huge penalty, and you're going to have to get every question right to pass, which is, again, like, what's up with this world, man? That, like, you could miss the bus and screw up your whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she hears that he thinks it's a Jedi temple, of course, because everything's Jedi to him. And she's thinking she can get a power coupling there. So Win doesn't care that he's supposed to go study for this test that determines his whole life. He wants to go find the Jedi temple in the middle of the woods that he saw. He gets his buddy Neil to go with him. Fern and KB are already there. But she kind of Tom Sawyer's Win and Neil into digging it up.
Yep.
Instead of them digging it up. She's like, it's mine, but yeah, you could dig it up if you want. And they do. The cybernetic girl gets the door to open because they find a control panel. Once they get inside, what was it? Once they get inside, Win's dad is coming. They hear him coming. And so they run inside to hide from him because they think they're in trouble. A switch gets thrown that closes the door. So now they're trapped. They try to find power to turn the door on, but Win breaks off. Once they turn off the power, Win has found a cockpit, which is upside down. And of course, he presses the blinking green button, which launches the ship. They try to get back out the door, but now it's way in the air. Win's dad sees that they're on the ship, but the ship is on autopilot now, It gets into space and takes off into hyperspace. And that's the end of the first episode, isn't it? Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, of course, if
Yeah.
you miss your finals, if you miss the bus the day you have your finals here, I mean, it probably wouldn't ruin your life, but
yeah.
it would be pretty detrimental to your, schooling.
Yeah.
And
it would be
it's
bad.
very interesting. I think Dan hit some really good points here, that there is something off about this planet and you don't know exactly what it is. It's very reminiscent of a lot of these other stories where communities have kind of been roped off by the higher ups in those communities. The Village is a movie, the Shyamalan movie, that kind of reminded me of that. The Giver was kind of like that. There's a lot of that kind of stuff here where it's like, what's going on in this community? What don't they want you to know? So that mystery and that intrigue is going to lead us into some of the stuff that happens in episode 2. So yeah, there's definitely something off about this planet. You could feel that in the first episode.
Yeah. And so episode 2, they've woken up the second mate droid, SM something. And this is a robotic John Silver, which is great and fun.
I love
and he's trying to find the captain to turn in these stowaways. But of course, Fern is a great bullshitter. Like she comes up with stuff like she is the Tom Sawyer of this group. I didn't mention Tom Sawyer, but she is kind of a Tom Sawyer. She's like, I killed your captain in single combat.
Yeah.
And that makes me the captain now.
I stabbed him. I stabbed him and I threw him into space. That's what she said.
And the droid's like, it seems unlikely. He seemed poorly suited to combat, but she's like, well, then why am I here and he isn't? So it's like,
that's right.
Check it out. You're the captain now.
Yep.
But this is our first thing. They're like, take us back to where we were. And he's like, where were we? Because he wasn't on until after they took off. And they're like, we're from Atten. And he's like, I don't have any records of that. And he does off a whole bunch of other planets, but he's never heard of Atten.
It's not on the map.
Yeah, it's not on the map. And so he takes them to a pirate port to get parts to repair the ship. And they think they're going to get directions. That's where we see a teak.
Yeah.
Which
I was going to say that was not teak. That was
quest.
not teak, but that was definitely the same species is what they were going for. Right. And, it's very interesting. So, yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, that second episode was criminally short, compared to the first one, especially.
Yeah, compared to the first one.
Yeah.
I feel like it was like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, here's the thing. If you're going to do a 2-episode premiere on a streaming network, a streaming show could be 30 minutes long. An episode could be 50 minutes long. An episode could be 15 minutes long. It's however long you want it to be, right? Why is it the whole thing just not episode 1?
Yeah.
I just don't understand.
I honestly, I think that they test it. I think that's the reason. I think that this is all, the episodes are predetermined before they, as they're shooting and
they
all
are,
that kind of stuff.
Each individual episode, or sometimes multiple different episodes, are directed by different directors.
Yeah.
So it's split up that way.
I think a lot of it's predetermined, and I think one of the big reasons they can't just do one longer episode, they test it out. They want to see, if we release just the first episode and do it weekly, is that going to be enough to grab people, or if we do the first 2 episodes, are people more likely to come back? And I think what we'll see is the end of the second episode had a harder hook than the end of the first episode. That's why I think they did it that way.
Sure.
It definitely did.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely did. The first episode, once again, it was very slow, and it didn't, like, by the conclusion of the first episode, I really wasn't super excited to go into episode 2. That's why I waited a day.
Yeah.
But at the end of episode 2, I was a lot more enthusiastic and on board with the story, the mystery.
The outpost was definitely an interesting thing, and I was very into. Yeah. I was very into the outpost. Anytime we get into anything that's reminiscent of the cantina, I'm there. So,
the first episode opens with a big action sequence at the raid, and then you don't get another one. You know what I'm saying? That's at the very beginning of the episode, and it's apart from the rest of the story, like a little like a
Nugget.
little prequel, like a little nugget at the beginning. This is an unrelated thing that we're going to tie back to later.
Mhm.
And you have that. And by the end of the episode, you're not even thinking about that because it didn't tie in, you
Mhm.
know, and you don't get any, it's the rest of it is just all character introductions and, you know, exposition. So yeah, like at the end of and I don't think it's very well established in the first episode that there's a mystery here of like, what is this planet? You know, that's not
Mhm.
even really. So yeah, you definitely need that second episode to have your hook. And the teak brings me to something because Jonathan, if you didn't watch our video, I know you've never watched Battle for Endor, not to be confused with the Battle of Endor. The Battle of Endor takes place in Return of the Jedi, and it's awesome.
Mhm.
The Battle for Endor is a TV special that came out a few years later about a little blonde girl whose whole family gets murdered in the first 5 minutes, and yet she has a fun, silly adventure with some Ewoks for the rest of it. But
And Wilford Brimley. Yeah.
yeah,
So
and Wilford Brimley, and
Diabetes.
yeah,
Yep.
diabetes. But he does eat like 6 pies.
That's how you get diabetes.
That's how you get diabetes.
At all times. And so Teak was a major character in Battle for Endor. And this is why me and Tim were thinking this was going to be bad. You hear that
Mhm.
Teak's going to be in it. You hear that there's going to be scenes from the holiday special in it. And you're thinking, oh man, but really they go by so fast that they work out to be like fun Easter eggs.
Yeah, those are
it's
just
something
Easter
minor.
eggs for the real fans because a lot of Star Wars fans aren't even going to notice that they're there. I was on a live stream last night, actually. There was a live stream last night. They were talking about it. And I kind of mentioned, I said, hey, did you guys notice, you know, the cab driver was the same species as Teak from Battle of Endor? And they're like, I don't even know what this guy's talking about. And it's because a lot of people have not seen the TV specials. There were 3 TV specials. They were all terrible. And most Star Wars fans have just completely and totally forgotten about them. Maybe they've seen them once, but they haven't really, you know, gone back and watched them in detail. Dan and I actually have watched them within the last month and reviewed them on this very platform. And it was awful. So we caught every one of those references, folks.
I got a question. Were they worse than Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
Yes. Yes, Jonathan.
Wow.
Yes.
No,
Jonathan, I'm telling you right now, the holiday special is one of the worst
special-
project I've ever seen.
Now the holiday
That's
special
impressive.
is orders of magnitude worse than the Ewok
Oh yeah.
films. The Ewok specials are not good.
I've never seen those either.
Yeah, but
Jonathan,
the holiday
if
special is a whole
you
order
would
of
turn the
magnitude.
holiday special off in 15 minutes. I will guarantee you would turn it off in 15 minutes.
It's supposed to be like a holiday variety show. So they cram excuses to have a variety show into this Star Wars setting, and yet none of it is holiday.
Mhm.
Like none of it's Christmassy. The only thing Christmassy about it is that it's a variety show, and you keep cutting to people singing and dancing and other weird stuff. It's
Mhm.
the first 15 minutes is Chewbacca's family at the Wookiee home planet with no humans.
No dialogue.
There's no subtitles. There's no subtitles, and there's
They're like
no
miming.
dialogue. It's just Wookiees roaring at each other.
Wow.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
There's a whole thing with Chewbacca's wife arguing with Chewbacca's son about taking out the trash, and you can follow it because but it's mime. They're just growling at each other, and she's shaking the trash can, and he's growling back.
And that's where the holo table comes from, Jonathan. When we're talking about those holo table dancers that you're like, huh, that's kind of weird. Why are they watching that? That was an act from the holiday special.
Wow.
So anyway,
So, but they were fun Easter eggs. It is not a comment on the quality of this show.
No.
So if it's worse than Nick Fury, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the made-for-TV movie featuring David Hasselhoff as Nick Fury, it's got to be really bad.
Yeah, the holiday special, it's like it can be fun. I don't know. It's not so bad that it's good though, but it can be fun to watch how just take it in and bask in the awful. That is so anyway, we then when they get across, they take a ferry from their ship to the spaceport. they pay the little teak creature with some of Wynn's
And he clearly was excited when they paid him.
yeah, he
right?
was
Like,
clearly excited to see how he got paid. He got Wynn's lunch money and he was like out of there. He was stoked.
Yeah.
And so they're wandering around, and this is another thing that felt very 80s about this project, right? We've had a battle where people get shot and killed in space, and now these kids have wandered off to space. They're in a pirate thing, and there's a brothel. There's a street thing. Like in a kid's project made most of the time nowadays, they would act like these things don't exist.
Yeah.
But this feels very 80s, and that they get to there and there's a brothel and there's dudes like getting drunk and there's dudes doing drugs and there's like a little street thing over here. It's very seedy, but in a still acceptable way, kind of like watching an 80s kids.
And I hate to bring up the prequels, but it does remind me of the prequels when Obi-Wan goes to the bar and the guy tries to sell him death sticks. Do you remember that? And that's one of those things. That's one of those things that it's like, it's clear what they're talking about, but they don't have to make any like really direct references because we're talking about space. We're talking about space drugs. You know what I mean? Yeah. So
it really hits the fan when Wim and Neil decide they're hungry. And they sit down at the stand and they order some food. And he says, that'll be however much. And like Neil's like, pay the man. And so Neil has hid his money in his sock after he realized how excited the little teak was to get it. And when he pays it, like all hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
Because we find out that what he has are mint condition Old Republic credits.
Mm-hmm.
So and the girls, the head lady that stood outside the brothel is trying to help the girls. She's found them like, are you kids? Why are you here? Mm-hmm. Where are you from? And they're trying to tell her, we're from At-Atten. And she's like, the treasure planet? That's not even real. Get serious. Stop lying to me. You need to get out of here. And now the boys.
Now, like, did you notice that lady was the same species as Jackie from the Acolyte? Did you notice that?
I did not.
Yeah, she's the same species as Jackie from the Acolyte. Go back and look at her again.
She
and you'll
look
be
the
like,
same to me.
Yeah, she's the same species as Jackie from the Acolyte.
She got the eye.
Yeah.
She didn't have white hair.
Yeah.
She didn't look the same.
Yeah.
Well, they have different, I guess, different coloration. What didn't she have? She had horns, right?
Yeah.
I don't think she had horns. Jackie had horns. I remember that very clearly.
But this lady had horns?
It was. I mean, I went back and looked at it because I heard it. I read something about it online, and I was just like, "Yeah, that they do look the same." So anyway,
I feel like I just assumed she was a Twi'lek because, like, anytime in Star Wars you have a dancing girl or
typically that's the case.
A space whore or a space stripper, they're Twi'leks. I just imagined the two things coming out of her head, and like,
Except in Ahsoka when we made him general for some reason. I don't know why, we made one a general.
We can't typecast our alien species, So anyway, the girls are trying to tell this lady they're from Manhattan. She tells them they're full of crap, and now everybody's getting in a fight at the food stand over the boys' money, and they're trying to figure out, where did you get this? Is it real? Is it fake? And they're like, we got it from home. This is the money there. It's At-Atten. And they're like, they're getting called BS because they're saying that's not real. Nobody knows how to get there. It's not even a real place. And like real trouble is starting to happen. The girl, now Fern comes out with a blaster. And fires it to combat. Where did she come up with the blaster? I went back to try to figure that out. Did you guys know she was carrying a blaster?
I don't.
Before she fired it?
I don't know. I didn't see it.
She must have found it on the ship or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, she's just a little kid amongst a bunch of pirates, so that didn't really work for long because one of the pirates just takes her blaster, and that's when the droid must have known something was wrong. They were gone too long. And he comes to the port and he starts whooping everybody.
Yeah.
Their first mate droid. And he's taking care of business. And they're going to get back on the ship. And they're like, why did you bring us to a pirate port? And they're like, he's like, because we're pirates.
Yeah.
And the kids are like, we're not pirates. We're just kids. And he's like, what? And that's when our droid friend gets, that's when Long John Silver, the droid, gets shot and killed. And Jonathan's favorite new character the Wolfman shows up. He's killed
Yeah.
our droid friend. He
This
runs
is-
the spaceport.
This is this show's version of Taserface, right? This is Taserface. So
Yeah.
this is
Yeah. So he is, knocked out the droid. He asks them where they're getting these New Republic credits. They tell him to. He's, and of course Fern gets yippy with him, and he's like, cool them off in the brig.
Mhm.
So now they're locked in the brig. They're arguing. Neo tries to get his new mouse friend that actually lived in the droid's head to go get the key, which in a different Disney project that would have worked. In a
Pirates
worse
of the
Disney
Caribbean.
project.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the mouse just buggers off. It's a mouse.
Yeah.
It's a space mouse. It's got multiple legs. It's a weird looking little thing. But anyway, that's when we see Jude Law for real for the first time. Tells them to calm down. Says he can help them. They're like, well, he's like, first we have to get out of here, and then I'll take you to your planet. They're like, the key's way over there. It's like the distance with the key is an illusion, and he floats the key to himself, ostensibly using the Force.
He uses the Force.
Yeah, he uses the Force, and the kids are like,
And Wim says,
did they ask him? They asked him if
Wim,
he's a Jedi.
Wim says, "Are you a Jedi?" And he says, "Shh." Right. So
He says, "Can you keep a secret?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And-
it's hard, and then we go to the credits. So it's hard to tell whether or not this is a pirate that's a Force wielder that's just working these kids, or whether or not this is a Jedi that's on some mission or something, right? So
Right.
there's a lot we don't know yet, but that's the intrigue of the first two episodes, and that's the hook into next week, which I think was a very good hook. So
Yeah, because now we've got him. We know that he's a Force user. Now he's of an age, based on the timeline, that he could have survived the Purge
mhm.
as a youngling or a very
Yep.
young apprentice. At this timeline, so he's roughly the same age as Ahsoka,
Mhm.
I would think.
Yeah.
So he could have been part of the Order, and then he could have joined pirates after Order 66, because
Mhm.
what else are you going to do?
Yeah,
And you wouldn't have been
exactly.
using the Force, because the Empire is going to come kill you as soon as you do that.
Mhm.
So maybe he's a grifter and he doesn't really use the Force. He did something else to get the key. We'll find out. All kinds of options are on the table now, and that's where we get this fun intrigue going forward. So that definitely was, and now we firmly established that this planet has been sequestered. They're using old Republic money. Did they not even know the Empire was a thing,
Mhm.
and that the rebellion happened, and there's a new Republic? Like, how far out of the loop is this planet, and why? Like,
Mhm.
why is it so isolated? Why does the whole thing seem to be ran by droids? So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, a lot of questions into next week, and
Yeah.
I think this is a great. I think this is a great thing. The one thing that I love about this, and the thing that I think that we've kind of established, is I love the fact that they set it apart from everything else in Star Wars. I don't like when we feel like we have to tie everything together. I love when it's just it's going to be its own story. That's how The Mandalorian started, and it was great, right? And then they decided that they had to bring everybody in. Oh, we need to kind of bring characters in that everybody knows to The Mandalorian. We need to introduce Boba Fett. We need to introduce Ahsoka. We need to, kind of blend everything in together and have Luke at the end. And that's the thing. Luke Skywalker at the end of season 2 was the perfect conclusion to the story. The perfect conclusion to the story.
Yeah.
Grogu goes with Luke to study to become a Jedi, and everybody lives and goes home happy, and that's it. But Disney couldn't leave well enough alone, and that's the problem. I think what they're doing with this series is how they started with The Mandalorian, and they need to learn their lesson and just keep away from the rest of Star Wars, and it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
And then they're going to make season. Well, they made season 3, and then they're also going to make the movie now. You guys are aware about the movie, right? I mean, it's going to be a Grogu and Mandalorian film.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious to see where that goes or why they're making that. But I guess at the same time, when you're taking that option and weighing it against a Rey movie, I mean, that's certainly a lot more of a appealing option, at least to the fan base.
Now, Mandalorian, like season 2, it ended. It was awesome. Like that was the best thing that Disney Star Wars has done with Luke Skywalker. Period.
I'm not gonna lie.
The Luke Skywalker, that one scene. That's the Luke Skywalker everybody wanted.
I was furious when I got halfway through Book of Boba Fett, which the first half of Book of Boba Fett was just terrible anyway. And so it's very clear what happened. The rewrite happened where we're going to use the second half of Book of Boba Fett in order to launch season 3 of The Mandalorian. Okay. That's what they decided they were going to do. All right. And I was furious because they just had the perfect conclusion. They just had the perfect conclusion to that story, and now they introduced another whole storyline that I was not interested in. And then they introduced all the Mandalorian race and all that. I was just not in. I was not a fan.
Yeah. And Mandalorian season 3 was not great, but even if you like Mandalorian season 3, it ended in Mando and Grogu have gotten like a little house.
Yeah. Well, Dan, you were in season 3, right? You
Jack
and
Black
were in that one episode.
Jack Black was in season 3 with Lizzo. Yeah,
I was there. Right. But like, it's a very wrapped up story by the end of season 3. So I don't know what they're going to do in this movie. I mean, they're just hanging out.
It doesn't make any sense.
In the backwater. They have no more quests. Like they're like semi-retired, man. Like,
yeah.
They're out there sitting on the porch and Grogu's floating rocks and they're done. So I don't know how you squeeze a whole movie out of that. And again, when they start tying it in, because they messed, it's not the main character's fault, but they told so many bad stories with the main characters that getting back to them just reminds you of those bad stories. Like the end of Mando season 2 was awesome because you got something awesome with Luke and you felt like a rectification, like, oh, that's the Luke I wanted. But then if you're going to do a season 3, then you got to answer the question, like, well, did Grogu get killed when Kylo Ren like turned against Luke and killed all of his students and destroyed his academy? Is that the fate of Grogu? And they're like, well, no, we can't make Baby Yoda get killed by everybody's least favorite Disney princess. So so that can't be the fate of the only merchandising cash cow that we've generated. So we have to bend over backwards to find some weird reason that he leaves Luke and goes back to Mando, and like it all starts falling apart. So again, you've ruined those characters, you've ruined their storyline. If you just forget about it, leave it alone, walk away, and do something totally different, that's the best move. So they don't need to tie this in.
I hope they don't, and that's the thing. I think the biggest I'm trying to think of what they even could tie it into. I mean, the only thing I could think about is maybe if Han had already kind of but that it doesn't make sense because Han has to have had had been and done all that kind of stuff before he leaves and goes off and becomes a scumbag again. So I'm trying to figure out how they could tie into the world that they've already introduced this to, but there's just not a lot of connections. And I think that's good, actually.
What episode do you think that we see Hondo? Hondo Anaka from Rebels.
I don't know. You know what I mean?
Hondo is at the parks. They have an animatronic Hondo at the park. So far, Hondo is just in some cartoons, so they gotta amateurize that park investment. So they could get Hondo in here.
We'll see. We'll see, man. I mean, I would think that if they kind of have this, this energy already with all these characters and they had a good storyline and they've got a good lead, they've got a good top billing with Jude Law, I don't know that they really need to bring anything else in. And if they do, it would almost be disappointing at this point. So
Yeah.
Maybe a
Yeah,
post-credit cameo, something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I
It's kind
don't
of
know.
par for the
Like
course.
if it's like the very very end, and then something like what we have at Mandalorian season 2, when Luke came in and saved the day at the very end, and then that was it. I was fine with that. That was great. You know what I mean? If they do something like that here, then okay. But if they're gonna have someone that's gonna be an integral character in the story, I'm just not gonna be into that. So
yeah. But so far, this has been pretty high quality entertainment. I would say that I actually very much enjoyed this.
I enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, at the expense of sounding like we actually like Disney Star Wars, because I think that Dan and I have been, our opinions are very, very clear. If anybody's going to get on here and rip us apart and say that we're just shills and we're all this, let me tell you, we would tell you if this was bad. Okay, go watch all of our weekly
Disney
reviews.
Star
of the
Wars
Acolyte.
is not all bad. Okay,
We
got
would
Andor,
tell you. We
we
would
got
tell you.
Andor is
I
good.
Rogue One.
Disney Star Wars has given us the best Darth Vader scene of all Darth Vader scenes ever. Okay,
Yeah, that Rogue One scene is awesome.
that Rogue One scene is unbelievable. And so, we can admit when something's good. We can admit when something's bad. The Acolyte was awful, and we ripped it to shreds. Okay, if this was bad, we would not hold back. We would tell you it was bad. Okay, and that's so save us your comments. We know that some of you went into this predetermined just because it's made by Disney, but it's not a bad project. It's really not.
No,
I agree.
Yeah,
I think that it's everything that they were selling it to us fans as, and I'm very intrigued, especially after episode 2. The first episode takes a little minute to get through. It's 45 minutes, very slow pacing. It takes time to establish those characters, but episode 2, it's a lot better, a lot more intrigued now.
Yeah,
it's also just a lesson. It's also just a lesson in how to appreciate your audience. These kids, all of the interviews I've seen with them leading up to this, they just could not be more excited to be involved in Star Wars, and they did not have to run into the audience. They didn't have to say.
They didn't tell the fans, "Hey, if you vote for a certain person, then just go elsewhere."
You never know.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous, but yeah, that's the case. I mean, a lot of, like, the Acolyte, that's pretty much a lot of the problems, is that they had a lot of that. There was a lot of stuff that was said beforehand, and we don't have that. These kids love it. Jude Law loves it. You can just tell they love being here, and I like that.
I don't think that's ever happened to Disney before.
No.
Snow White.
No. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Pardon me.
And this show, it's aimed, like they've said, it's a kids show, and it is kid friendly, and it is about kids, but it's a kid show in the way they made kids projects in the 80s. It's not dumbed down. It's not just like you're not watching Barney in space here. This is actually quality entertainment that a whole family could enjoy together, from the small kids to like grandpa could watch this, and you could all be entertained at the same time.
Yeah, I think Goonies is a great comparison. And I think if you can enjoy the Goonies at one age, and when you're 12 and when you're 40, then you can enjoy this no matter what age you are. So yeah.
So did we have any other key observations that we wanted to address about Skeleton Crew?
I think I pretty much, all my thoughts I covered. You guys
not yet. I'm actually looking forward to next week.
Yeah.
Somebody in the comments brought up Urkel. That was the one thing that I saw that I was all excited about. But I mean, overall, it's so far so good. But once again, Disney fooled me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Yeah. I'm not gonna let you fool me thrice, Disney. It's not happening.
Yeah. I'm not endorsing the whole series yet because it's not over.
Right.
But if they keep this. So, Jonathan, do you have it? What do you got coming up? What's next on Comic Book Cinema?
Yeah, we got a lot of solo reviews coming up over the next couple weeks. A lot of stuff that's come out recently, like stuff that's coming soon in a week or so, like Kraven the Hunter. A lot of stuff's going to be popping up soon. Also, the following year, 2025, a lot of exciting stuff. I'm sure that you and Tim will be back on very soon again. So check us out, YouTube, Comic Book Cinema. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Real Comic Book Cinema.
All right. Yeah, big year next year for Comic Book Cinema. Like a lot of films are dropping.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic Four.
Yeah, that's a full slate. You got Superman.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
very exciting.
Yeah, and I know that your biggest thing that you're excited for is Thunderbolts, right?
Not the biggest, but I am optimistic about it. I think that it's probably going to be a movie that people aren't expecting to be good, but it's going to be pretty good. Whether or not it makes money at the box office is a whole different story.
I will admit the trailers actually have been good for Thunderbolts. You know, they've been enjoyable. So so that's what Jonathan's going on. Did you have any other topics for us to hit tonight, Tim? Did you have anything you wanted to rant about?
No, we're good.
No.
I think Tim's modem is frozen.
No, we're good, man.
Can't
wait for next week.
Everybody, like, share, subscribe, hit us in the comments. Go to Jonathan's channel, which is in the description. Like, share, and subscribe there too. And argue with us because we love that. Tell us why we're wrong about everything you've seen on both of our channels. Even when we disagree, tell us how you disagree with both of us. So anyway, Till next week, we are the Nerd Champs, and that's Jonathan.